Gobble, gobble. It's Turkey Day.
It's Thanksgiving Day football, baby.
We are bringing you the big Thanksgiving week episode where we wrap our waiver wires, our starts and sits, and our injury reports all into one delicious packaged Thanksgiving meal just for you.
We got the stuff in. And you know what the best thing is?
What?
The Jets don't play, so there's no chance for the butt fumble.
You know what the worst thing is?
The Giants play?
The Cowboys.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. What
Let's
a gross
get into
game.
it. And welcome back to Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono.
And I'm your host, Chris. And we are jumping into our Thanksgiving week episode. We got everything for you in this episode, so stay tuned. We are going to have everything in timestamps right down below. We're going to have...
We got greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes.
We got greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, ham, turkey, chicken.
We got it all for you.
We got it all right?
But why don't we start with the appetizers here and talk about the injury report from Week 12.
Yes.
Before we jump into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and stick with us through this long episode. We're going to have timestamps down below where you can skip ahead to what you want to see, especially our matchups. But at the end of the day, if you want to watch it all and you want to get all the information you need to win your weekend, stick tuned, put it on your car, put it in your on your speaker, whatever you need during Thanksgiving on that long trip to your in-laws.
Hey, put your earphones in. You want to block out the family? Put it in.
Put us on.
Put us on.
Cheers.
Cheers, baby.
And cheers to Great Notion,
Great Notion
for single stack. That's that maple syrup and coffee for you. All right, big
delightful. Injury
of the weekend. Gardner Minshew.
Feels so Canadian drinking that.
It warms you up real fast.
It's
Gardner
true.
Minshew out with a collarbone injury. He is going to be done for the season, broken collarbone. This brings a little predicament in there. Aiden O'Connell, broken thumb, is supposed to come back, has a chance to come back week 13 based on the diagnosis originally. We'll see how that works. We haven't had a ton of news of him coming out of the practice side of things. However, if he does not come back, you have Desmond Ridder, and we know what situation that's like. This is going to affect Jacoby Myers. This is really going to affect Brock Bowers owners, who this guy is just taking the tight end league by storm. And it's going to affect the running game because teams are going to be less worried about the pass and are going to be able to stop an already banged up backfield.
Yeah, this is just not good news all around. If Aiden O'Connell plays, it's not terrible. At least for Brock Bowers, he's going to get the ball. But like Desmond Ridder, we've seen what kind of a quarterback he is. They've had weapons around him, and he still wasn't effective. We saw him when he came into the game, just really didn't know how to operate this offense. Didn't really. I've never seen him as a good quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that's going to change here. But yeah, this is not great news for the Raiders, and especially because Jacoby Myers was coming on the last 2 weeks as really emerging as a wide receiver one there. Brock Bowers, obviously, he's been incredibly productive this year. But, yeah, Ridder, I just don't like him there. Abdullah also had a good game last week. But in some other injury news at the quarterback position.
Well, real quick,
Sure.
Week 6, Pittsburgh, Brock Bowers was tight end 10, had 10 targets, 9 receptions for 71 yards, no touchdowns, and that was with Aiden O'Connell in his one healthy game. Prior to getting the injury in Week 10. So that's something to chew on. It's not a big sample size.
Right. But it was also earlier in the season with Brock Bowers. So I think later in the season, there's no one else there. There's no Devontae Adams.
Jacoby
anymore.
Myers is putting himself out there. He quietly got 120 yards this past game.
Right.
And he's going to be the number one guy there. But Aiden O'Connell is worthy of throwing 40 passes in a game just like Minshew is.
Sure.
The problem with this team overall, they can't run the ball that well. Not well enough to establish it, to open up the passing game. So I don't know how...
Well, they just don't have a bell cow that they're able to hand the ball off to 20 times a game. They had 20 carries the entire game, not just with one running back, with the entire game for all of their runners.
Correct.
So they just can't establish the run. They threw the ball 42 plus times. Minshew alone threw the ball 42 times. But yeah, it's not a great outlook for this Raiders team. But really, other than Bowers, there really wasn't a lot of fantasy relevancy there this entire season. Even Myers is at best
a wide receiver.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
In other quarterback news, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield both got injured during the games. They both came back into the game, but it is something to watch this week, especially with the shortened weeks for a lot of teams. Baker had a stinger. He came back into the game and finished it. They were handily winning that game. Sam Darnold, the other guy, rolled his ankle in a must-win game for them. They ended up coming and holding on and winning that game in a thriller. But
Darnold's the one that worries me more based on his reaction, and we know how ankles in the moment can, with adrenaline pain can go away, and then the week comes in, you have swelling,
right.
You have immobility, and then
on the flip side, I actually don't think this hurts the Vikings as much. I mean, Darnold's been great this season. I don't think that there is definitely a downswing from him to Mullins, but Mullins knows how to operate this system. Mullins been with these guys before. He knows how to, and we've seen productive numbers from Jefferson, from Addison with Mullins at quarterback. So I'm not as concerned with this situation from a team perspective. Baker, on the other hand, if there wasn't a nagging injury, it does affect what that team wants to do. Baker is a huge identity piece for that team. With how tough he is at the quarterback position. He adds an element to he's not a scrambler, but he
scrambles well.
He scrambles well, and it's physical, and he earns yards.
Yeah,
that's probably a good way to say it. He earns the yards. He's not sliding out there very often. He's leading with his head. He's taking on hits. Unfortunately, that leads to stingers as well.
Yeah, and back of the Darnold one, not to hang too long on this, but I think Darnold too. They're in a situation where they're one game back of the Lions in the NFC. They're pretty much tied with the Eagles. With the Eagles, they only have 2 losses.
Yeah, so the Packers.
The Packers have 3.
So
they're
one game behind.
Yeah,
You're
Packers
right.
are 1 game behind, and so like they're in that division. But then the Eagles in the NFC overall, like you have 2 teams in the Eagles and Vikings vying for that number 1 overall spot. On the Lions, and the Lions are in their division, so it's even bigger. They're not going to want to give up a game by putting a backup in if they don't have to.
Right.
So that's something that I feel comfortable with Darnold moving forward, but it is something to watch. In terms of running backs, you had David Montgomery and Austin Eckler go down. Austin Eckler with a concussion, and he's going to be out for sure this next week, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's out a little bit longer. It's his second one this season in the past, 4 weeks? 5 weeks, so that's something to watch out for. Montgomery left the game early. He was able to almost return. He didn't get the pads on. He looked like he didn't get the pads off. He was looking like he was ready to come back in. I think precautionarily they kept him out because at the end of the day, they are a team that was winning the football game, and they were fine with running all through Jahmyr Gibbs rather than having to go back to David Montgomery for any reason. Brock Purdy's a quarterback here that you want to watch. He missed this past week. He started light throwing today on Monday. Don't know what that means for the Week 13 matchup, but that's something to watch because it affects all the pass catchers, and we saw that this past weekend.
But yeah, what a difference is.
Even the running game was just not there, and that was against
Trent Williams didn't play in that game either.
Yeah, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter. You're still facing Seattle, who has not been.
That does matter. He's arguably the best player in football.
Yeah, but I'm just saying overall, you still have arguably the best running back in football. Does he need Trent Williams to perform over 50 yards of rushing? I don't know. And then you had Romeo Doubs with a concussion as well, leave, and Josh Downs. Josh Downs is going to be week to week with an AC joint. It looks like it's going to be an uphill battle for him, so don't expect him to play week 13. We'll talk about in our waiver options what to go for. So let's get into our streamers for the quarterback position here.
Yeah, I mean, Will Levis at the top of that. I mean, we talked about it last week. Will Levis being a guy that absolutely this offense is kind of starting to become what we thought in the preseason it was going to be. He ends up going out there has consistently week in and week out over the last 4 or 5 weeks been having just big plays. I mean, you had a 98-yarder 2 weeks ago. You had 2 big 60-plus yard touchdowns this week, and those types of plays matter in fantasy. Like when you go from having 100 yards passing to all of a sudden you're at 160 with a touchdown. Yeah. Huge plays, big jumps in points. Will Levis, definitely a guy they have, and we talked about it too. The strength of schedule for the rest of the season for the Titans is great, especially from the passing perspective.
Yeah, I mean the next the next two games, at least in weeks 13 and 14, which are leading up to the playoffs. So if you're in a hunt to get to the playoffs and your quarterback is not one of the top guys, that is a must start. You've got Washington, who we just saw what Cooper Rush could do there. And we've got Jacksonville, which is pretty much just an open game. It's a peewee match at that point. Two games where I love Will Levis. And if you're the owner of Calvin Ridley, I'm starting him the rest of the season as a wide receiver 2 or flex, depending upon where you got him.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford's another one that I really like here too, based on that schedule. I think, again, they're in a must-win situation to keep. They're still in the hunt in that division. That's how bad that division is this year.
Yeah.
And his schedule's not that great, but he has New Orleans coming up, which is one that
and more importantly, he has healthy receivers.
But he's got New Orleans. The tough one's going to be Buffalo week 14, but then San Fran. We just saw what Seattle was able to do to San Francisco, or Green Bay was able to do to San Francisco there. We have the New York Jets, who are not as good as they seem. And then he finishes off with Arizona, which Seattle was not effective the whole game, but effective enough through the air with Geno Smith that arguably Matt Stafford's better than Geno Smith, and those two receivers are better than the two receivers in Seattle. So he's another one that I like that's more of a solid start, that he's less of a guy that you have to think about spot playing. It's a guy that if you have injuries at the quarterback position, or you have a guy that you've been playing that you're unsure about, or you don't like the matchups as much, like maybe Baker Mayfield with a 50% or 80% Mike Evans, Matt Stafford, I'd probably play over him.
Yeah. Moving on to the running back position, McNichols, I think, is the big ad for this week. With Eckler going down and Eckler most likely missing multiple weeks, we've seen McNichols step in to this RB2 role. But the other thing to consider here is that Brian Robinson Jr. got hurt in this game too.
Yeah.
He got rolled up on. And so you're having not only Eckler that's possibly on the injury report, but Brian Robinson too.
Correct.
So McNichols, in again, a division that Washington needs to keep winning.
They do.
They need to keep pace with the Eagles and the rest of the NFC.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not a great matchup against Tennessee. However, if you're the owner of Brian Robinson and or Eckler, you got to go get this guy, because if you have Brian Robinson, you probably are leaning on Brian Robinson as your RB2. So at this point, you're going to be putting in an RB2 anyway. That's usually a normal flex position, unless you drafted, luckily, like J.K. Dobbins late or something like that.
Yeah.
So I like that as a play, because you got to get the running game going anyway. Amir Abdullah for the Raiders. We kind of talked about it this past week a little bit, but Amir Abdullah anyway showed prowess in the passing game. He had 8 carries. Again, this is not a team that's going to be able to run heavily. They're not going to run the ball that often. Taking away QB rushes, they're not going to run the ball that much.
Yeah.
But he does have the passing ability. We saw that 21-yard reception in the end zone, which is a beautiful passing catch. Take it with a grain of salt. He may be the starter there if those guys are still out and injured. He may not be. So either way, you got to keep an eye on the reports, but the quarterback change could also affect everything too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that's a big thing is who's going to take the snaps there. But me and you were talking right before we started filming, and you said you weren't going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up. Watching this game, especially in the afternoon slate with only 3 teams playing, I was able to watch a lot of this game. And the guy who stood out to me from like the eye test was Sincere McCormick at the running back position. Averaged 6.6 yards a carry. Only had 5 carries in the game, but ran for 30 plus yards. There needs to be a running back that steps up into this. If Zamir White and Madison are out multiple weeks again, Abdullah is not a traditional running back.
Never has been.
He never has been. He's been a receiver out of the backfield. And if you looked at the splits from this week, we kind of talked about them not even getting 20 carries as a team, 20 rushes as a team. Well, Abdullah was the leading rusher on the team with 8 carries, and McCormick was 5 carries.
Yeah.
And so I think that at least that's going to become more of a 50-50 split, or McCormick's going to eat a lot more if Madison and Zamir White are both down. I like the way he looked. He looked explosive on those runs. Obviously, if you're running for 6.6 yards a carry against the Broncos, who have not been an easy team to run against all season long.
Yeah, easy team in general.
Yeah. So I don't love this offense, but a bright spot in that. This is a guy that definitely sparked on his first couple touches in the NFL. We'll see if that's something that continues with the other running backs down. Like, obviously, they're in need of a running back.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a running back to play. No football team in the NFL, all 32 teams are playing with a running back.
Well, they're not invested into Zamir White. They're not invested into Madison. They're not this is a chance for them to see what like young players have. I thought Dylan Laube was going to have a lot more carries in that game, especially after the big return that he had in that game. Had a lot of energy.
I just don't think they game planned for it, period. Like, it was the way they ran the ball, it was scripted to be those two guys to see what they had there too, I'm sure.
Right. It could have been. But he got very minimal work in this game.
Yeah.
With the other
that
guys
could
down.
change this week. I mean, we saw what happened with Denver, too, as well. It happens. Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Own him.
Put him on notice.
Jeez.
Again, like, the volume was not that great this past week.
Only 2 receptions.
2 catches. He did have 5 targets still, so he's got 11 targets in the past 2 weeks. But the dude has 6 touchdowns in 7 weeks. 6 touchdowns, 7 weeks. And we just talked about Will Levis. His schedule doesn't get harder. It only gets easier.
Well, what did we talk about last week when we talked about him? Is like how, at least from my perspective, I love guys that are consistent. I love trendy guys. And when you see a trend, six touchdowns in 7 weeks, you like, this guy needs to be owned.
Yeah, exactly. That's all.
I get it's ugly. He needs to be owned.
But it's not that ugly anymore because of the schedule. And, I mean, that's all we're going to say about it because we've been talking about him. Pick him up. If he's in your league, pick him up. If anything, you're like, well, I should roster a second defense. Pick him up.
Pick him up.
Because at the end of the day, you need a guy who's getting in the end zone.
Pick him up. He's outperforming Devontae Adams. He's outperforming Tank Dell. He's outperforming Malik Neighbors. Like, he's outperforming a lot of high-end guys. Like, go and pick him up and put him on your team.
Exactly.
Another guy we talked about last week was Devon Vele.
I think this is probably the third week we've talked about. This happens every year. We talk about some guy over and over and over again.
Low ownership still.
Against Vegas, a tough passing or tough receiving defense to go against. He still had 6 receptions for 80 yards on 9 targets. He is going to be the next man up after Cortland Sutton.
Cortland Sutton's the guy there for sure.
Yeah.
But like, Vele is another big body target that they are trusting on those like skinny post routes, the deep in routes across the middle. Like, he's getting those mid-range targets, which are chunk plays.
So he has, and this is a situation where like you may have to throw him in a flex if an injury happens during that, because think about this. You have a top 22 wide receiver in standard scoring for the past 3 weeks. They play Cleveland up here, a softer pass defense. They have a bye week. Then they come back and play Indy. You're not going to play him against the Chargers, but then you've got the Bengals in the championship week. And if you are in a flex position where you hate your flex play or an injury happens during the playoffs, this is a guy you want on your bench because he's somebody you could put in with confidence, and a guy who gets 9 targets in a tough game. In an offense that can't run the ball that well, he's the second man after Cortland Sutton. So I like it too.
Yeah.
Noah Brown's another one too here. Again, it's the same situation. You've got a receiver in Terry McLaurin. I was drawing a blank. Scary Terry, who has kind of disappeared the past 2 games. 2 games ago, he completely disappeared. This past week, if he didn't get that 80-something yard touchdown at the end, would we really be talking about his name that much? No. 10 targets, 6 receptions, 71 yards for Noah Brown against Dallas. They have a tough game against Tennessee coming up here. However, he has opportunities. He's been as high as wide receiver 12 before because he caught that one bomb pass against Chicago. But there's more confidence, it seems like, because he had 7 targets, 6 and 7 targets following the Chicago game. He had a down play against Philly, but that was a tough game for Washington. If you watched it, he only had 4 targets. Now 10 targets in Dallas. He has Tennessee, a bye, coming into the playoffs. You got New Orleans, a positive game, tough game Philly, and then an easy game against Atlanta. So if you happen to be playing championship week in week 18, which you should not be, he has Dallas again.
Yeah.
So he's another one to own, especially I would like him too, even if you want to shore up your team in case something happens to McLaurin or McLaurin's underperforming and you want to play somebody that Daniels is throwing to, Noah Brown's the guy there.
Yeah.
Now Eckler being hurt too may change it up because I would say McNichols isn't the biggest receiving back out there.
And I know me and you talked, kind of went back and forth on this too. With the Josh Downs injury, and if he doesn't go, who to own there? And
I agree with you. It's Alec Pierce.
It's Alec Pierce.
Yeah.
A.D. Mitchell he's just fallen by the wayside. Even when when everyone's healthy, he's the fourth receiver.
Well, they do 3 receiver sets a little more often because they don't have the most trustworthy tight ends out there.
Yeah.
So when they do, he's going to be out there. But I agree, Alec Pierce, if you're looking for a game changer, and we've seen A.D. Mitchell when Pittman was out, had some big opportunities. He had rushes. They're trying to mix him in. But Pierce is a bigger playmaker, and he's going to be downfield. I like it a little bit more, obviously, than the A.D. Mitchell play. So Alec Pierce is one of our guys here. And then our last one is going to be Pop Douglas. We've said his name before. We talked about it again. He's a volume guy. He's not going to be an end zone guy there, too, but he's pure volume. A tough Miami defense. He was able to get good volume, good receptions, and get downfield. I think you're going to see that the rest of the time in a team that's going to struggle to run the ball still.
And a team that's just going to play from behind most games.
Yep. 2 tight ends.
Streamers. Hey, guess what?
These aren't just streamers. I mean, we talked about Taysom Hill.
I was going to say, guess what we're going to talk about? Taysom
Hill.
Hill. Another player, guys, you should own this guy.
You're going to listen, you play him, you're going to have a week where he scores 1.5 points. But you have the opportunity to score 30 with Taysom Hill. There's no tight end out there that's going to score 30 points for you because nobody's doing what he's doing. And then the other one is Noah Gray. I know, Chris, you're heavy on this. You wanted to bring him up last week, and you were pretty close to doing it. Well, now's the week to do it after we see the 2 touchdown performance here.
Yeah, it's not just a 2 touchdown performance. I talked about it last year. We briefly mentioned it. I know I kind of went back and forth with one of our subscribers last year about it, calling me crazy because I'm talking about Noah Gray, and he went out that night and scored a touchdown. He's involved, and we've seen a downtick in snaps for Travis Kelce year after year for the last 3 years. And the guy who's been stepping up into that role is Noah Gray, and he's been more and more familiar with this offense. He's been more and more comfortable with Mahomes, and we've seen this year that he's involved a lot more on the field, even with Kelce, and being targeted by Mahomes. Especially when all the attention's going on Kelce and going on these other weapons, he's forgotten about. And that's kind of like almost the trick to this offense is who's the person that the defense is going to forget about?
Well, let's just put it this way. He's had 4 touchdowns in 2 games. Against Buffalo, he was tight end 4. He had 2 touchdowns, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So he's a red zone threat there. Last week, he was 4 for 4 against Carolina, tight end 1 on the weekend. And the original reason he was tight end 4 was because Taysom Hill was tight end 1. He would have been tight end 3.
Yeah.
But he saw 76% snaps 2 weeks ago against Buffalo. He saw 50 or 69? 59 last week. So he's been in the 50s and 60s the whole time. Buffalo was his biggest one. They're going to have some tough games coming up. Vegas may be a little bit easier for him, but he's going to have there's going to be a
Vegas
tough
always plays them tough.
Yeah, Chargers they got as well, and that's going to be a tough game for this team here. They've got Cleveland, who plays this team tough. Then you got Houston and Pittsburgh.
Gray is not a sexy pick. He's not going to have 10 targets in a game. But what he's going to do with those targets is score touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's going to get targeted in the red zone.
He's a streamer play, especially if you got a tight end that's on bye next week or week 14.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Mark Andrews and guys like that.
Or you have a tight end position you've been struggling at.
Oh, yeah, and streaming tight ends.
And streaming tight ends. He's a streamable option.
Yep. And then talk about streamers. Let's talk about defenses here. You got Dallas versus the Giants or Giants versus Dallas. I'd like Dallas versus Giants a little bit more. This team is in disarray. If you have a second,
I plan on being drunk by the time this game's even going.
Yeah, because you're not driving. I am.
I know.
And then we got Texans who actually had 7 sacks in the first half this past week, and they're playing the Jaguars. So you're going to like the way you look.
And Trevor Lawrence is coming back, but I don't think that matters.
He may not come back. Well, they haven't committed to it. He started practicing here. So that's our waivers and streamers of the week. If you have any comments or questions, or should I play this person? Should I play that person? Should I pick this person up? Drop a comment.
Drop a comment.
And before we jump into our matchups, cheers. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey.
All right. Let's get into this. Week 13 sits, starting with the Turkey Day games.
Hey, Turkey Day.
The morning game being Chicago at Detroit.
Oh, 12:30 Eastern.
It's a 12:30 game. It's Detroit at home. Detroit is favored 11 points.
Yeah, I like that.
And this is by ESPN Bet, by the way, in terms of that. So we're not talking DraftKings or anything. We're going straight off ESPN. But 11 points with a 48.5 over/under, which on the slate for the weekend is the highest, tied with New Orleans and LA. So 48.5. This may be another game where Jared Goff could, in theory, throw for 300 yards and one or no touchdowns.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's go back last year to last year's game. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that Detroit lost that game on Thanksgiving.
Was it to Washington though? Was that the Washington game?
Detroit.
I think it was Detroit, Washington. Go. We'll look at their schedule. While Chris is looking that up, you're starting your studs in Detroit here against Chicago. The matchup may seem difficult, but they are at home in the Dome. I like it. In terms of the Chicago side, I do like Caleb Williams. Thrown for 300 yards against a Minnesota defense that is difficult. And yeah, they went deep into the game and even to overtime, but still 300 yards is a step up for him. Keenan Allen is somebody that I said going into this past week that I liked a lot more than Odunze, and I'm going to say it again. I like him a lot. Keenan Allen is still an elite receiver in the NFL. I don't know why people are thinking he's washed and trashed. He's had a difficult time getting the ball to him from his quarterback. Now his rookie quarterback's getting a little bit more comfortable. All three of his receivers healthy. So I like that in a tough game against Detroit. This could be an upset here. This could be a little bit of an upset.
They played the Packers.
Oh, it was the Packers game?
And they lost.
Yeah.
They did lose on Thanksgiving last year.
So we're looking at an 11-point on a 48.5. That's putting 11-point favorites at 36. So what are you talking about? 13 points for Chicago? 14 points for Chicago here? Does that seem right?
I think that they do. I think it goes over in this game. Either Detroit's not scoring as much and Chicago is going to keep it closer, but I still like it. I still like the over in this game. For Chicago, I'm starting DJ.
18 points, sorry.
For Chicago, I'm starting DJ Moore.
Yeah, I like DJ Moore.
I like DJ Moore. I like Keenan Allen in this game. Like, there was a lot of crazy plays that Caleb made last week. And he's been doing that all season. They end up losing. The offense doesn't look that great at the end of the day. Like, statistically, they look good.
It was sloppy.
It was very sloppy. Swift looked good from a receiving standpoint. And then, Roshan ends up getting in for the touchdown. Yeah, Detroit's going to win this game, I think, and pretty handedly. And you're going to start your studs on Thanksgiving. Like, this could be a 50. They could drop 50 points.
I think this could be an upset. We just saw Detroit against the Colts start off slow, and luckily the Colts offense wasn't good enough through the air with Anthony Richardson. The Chicago offense through the air is not as bad as Anthony Richardson through the air. And if they start off slow against a tough Chicago defense, it may be closer than we think. That's all I'm saying.
It's a divisional game. It's a game Detroit.
But it is in Detroit. I will say that.
It's in Detroit, and it's this team was on the brink last season. These types of games, they've been winning this year. They're different. They're just as good this year, but a different team. And you can kind of see in the way they play, like the hunger and like the same core group is back.
Yeah,
like, this isn't a different team. So I think that Montgomery's going to play. Both Montgomery and Gibbs are going to go be electric as normal. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game a lot.
I mean, you're starting your studs. Montgomery's the only one you want to watch the practice. Like, he probably does play, but watch the practice reports and see what he does, because Chicago has been beaten by the run game. So
moving on to game 2.
New York at Dallas. Doesn't really matter if it's at Dallas. I don't think it does. But New York versus the Cowboys. It's a 4:30 game.
CD?
These are the ones who have, if you have an early dinner time, you get to sit there and regurgitate it while watching this game. It's going to give you agita the whole time.
Yeah.
I would say start CD because it's going to be a tough pill to swallow sitting him. I think you could start Neighbors. I think the squeaky wheel situation may be coming here, or Dayball may be. Well, I think they would have fired Dayball today on Monday if they were going to fire him at all. But I think Neighbors.
It's only 8:43.
You're not wrong, but they'd like to get somebody done early in the morning, then they could start moving on with the plan.
Yeah.
I think Neighbors coming out and saying, like, this is if you're watching the Giants play football, the best player on the offensive team is Neighbors. Tyrone Tracy, close second. And at the end of the day, the problem with the offense of the Giants is you're not getting the ball to your best player right off the kick. You got to wait till the third quarter. And even Neighbors said it. It's like, we're down 30-0, then I start getting the ball. Like, what do you expect me to do? So I don't know if I love the way he approached that message, but it is a squeaky wheel, and we've seen squeaky wheels get the grease. Yeah,
and this is a team that I really like. Yeah, Tyrone Tracy looks good. The game script's going to get out of hand, and this is an offense that is just incompetent versus Dallas is just plain bad.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
like the Giants' offense is just they can't protect. That's been the problem. Daniel Jones is not the issue with this team. He never was the issue with this team, and Giants fans hated on him so much, but he was never the issue. They couldn't protect him during the last 4 freaking years, and they want to make the argument. They're like, oh, well, Saquon Barkley, if we had a bad offensive line, Saquon Barkley wouldn't be the running back he is. No, Saquon Barkley is the running back he is now because he has a decent offensive line. All right, if they would have gotten him a halfway decent offensive line, it would have saved –
you're not wrong.
Daniel Jones there. It would have probably kept Saquon there, and this team would be a lot better than they are right now. Daniel Jones is not the problem. DeVito's not the answer. Drew Lock is not the answer. Those guys are probably less mobile than Daniel Jones is, and they can't run the football.
No, listen. I think you have it wrong there. They're not less mobile than Daniel Jones. They're not runners like Daniel Jones. Like Daniel Jones is a rushing quarterback. Tommy DeVito can scramble. We saw it last year. He can make plays on the run. He has a quicker arms action than Daniel Jones does. It's not as long, so he gets the ball out quick. But you're right. The offensive line's terrible. So, yeah, Malik Neighbors is not getting the ball. It'd be one thing if they just couldn't get the ball out, which at times it looks like that. But they're also just not getting the ball to him. They're getting the ball to other people. And it's not even checkdowns. Like, it's design play calls that are not to him. And I don't know what you're doing, Daboll. Like, if you're watching this, which I doubt you are, but if you're watching this, I'm rooting for you, bud. Like, I like you as a head coach, but you don't keep your job or you don't get your best players the ball. Like, you just put your investment into this wide receiver. You want to keep him. You don't want an Odell Beckham situation. And you sat there with Joe Shane, and both of you probably agreed that we're going to pay Daniel Jones and we're not going to pay Saquon Barkley what he's asking for higher than this. And Mara stood there, and we all saw it on live TV that he was going to be very upset. He's going to sick to his stomach if he's got to watch Saquon in Philly. And he's watching it. He's sick to his stomach. So that being said, in New York, you're starting Neighbors. If you have a better option with a good matchup, I wouldn't fault you for match. Like we saw what Waddle and Addison have been able to do. I had them on. I had only played one of them on my bench, but there's better opportunities other places that are going to get the same amount of targets and probably have more touchdown capital involved in them. Yeah. And then on the Dallas side, I do like Schoonmaker if Ferguson's out again this week because he looked great this past week.
Yep.
The Giants have been good against the tight end, but that's not because of covering the tight end. That's just because of they're getting beat everywhere else.
Right.
This could be a Dowdle game. The Giants have been gashed in the running game a lot. So it could be a Dowdle game here too. He'd be a flex option for me. And then Tyrone Tracy is a low RB1 option here this week too against a bad rushing defense. In the Cowboys.
I rank him a little bit lower, but yeah, around there. High RB2.
High RB2, low RB1.
Moving on to the night game for Thanksgiving. We got Miami and Green Bay.
Interesting to have Miami on Thanksgiving against Green Bay in Lambeau. Yeah. That's the thing that scares me here, in Lambeau.
Yeah, I don't love it for Miami.
No. I mean, right now, let me look up the weather in Lambeau, but you talk about what your thoughts are on Miami while I give the weather report.
I mean, I just don't love it in the colder weather. Miami, obviously, Waddle had an explosive game. Achane had a really good game. Tua looked good throwing the football. I mean, Tua has always been, a great, accurate slant thrower. And this team does well when they have the lead, right? But when they're behind is when they've always struggled. This is a game where, I think they're going to struggle. Josh Jacobs has looked absolutely fantastic. This offense is churning around that because if you're able to establish the run, you're able to run everything.
Everything's going to get open.
Everything you want after that. And they've been doing that. I mean, every week it's a different guy. They have so many weapons on this team. It doesn't matter if Dobbs is out. Bo Melton will come up and play. Like, they still have Christian Watson. They still have Jaden Reed. They still have Dontavian Wicks. They still have Tucker Kraft.
And they've got a good defense, too.
And so I like Green Bay in this game. I think that Miami has a chance to make it interesting. What's the weather like?
High 33, but by game time, it's looking like it's going to be in the mid 20s with they're at the tail end of 20% snow.
Yeah,
snow.
So there's a huge winter storm that's coming through for the southeast of the United States. You're going to get smashed with rain, but for the Great Lakes, it's going to be a lot of snow. So at least for the weather, I mean, we got Detroit, doesn't matter, indoor game, but Green Bay, and then moving through the weekend. It's something to watch out for those games coming through. Mm-hmm. Green Bay, it's going to be freezing. In that case, I hate this game for Miami.
We saw what happened against the Chiefs in Kansas City too.
It's just notorious. Like, Miami does not play well
in the cold.
Yeah. Tua does not play well in the cold.
Yeah.
Mike McDaniels shrivels up and turns into a
pumpkin.
A pumpkin.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you could PC it all you want.
Yeah.
But when it's cold out. So if it's going to be sub 20, Tyreek Hill is probably I don't even know if I love Waddle in this game. I don't know how much offense that I love from Miami in this game.
See, the Waddle conundrum is tough. As a Waddle owner, it's tough, but like being a Waddle guy,
10 weeks, right?
Yeah, see in 10 weeks. No, I laughed because I told Chris, I was like, I made a trade for Waddle in our league. I traded Odunze for Waddle straight up. And Odunze carried a little bit more weight because he was a keeper for me for the next 2 years. But got Waddle. I didn't play him a single game because I had been literally not having to because I have my flex is a running back. And I had Higgins and Neighbors. And so when it came down to it, I was playing Addison at the time. Well, come to see 10 weeks after week 1 when he was a 100-yard receiver, we now have him as a wide receiver 3 on the weekend. But if we go back to last year and you look at the Kansas City game, he had 5 targets, 2 catches, 31 yards in a game where it was freezing cold. And that offense couldn't do it. Now, it wasn't this going to be – it was way colder than what it's going to be, but couldn't do anything in that game. And then you look at in the games later on in the season, they didn't have any really cold games. Like week 12 against the Jets – could have been cold. They still had 100 yards, but it probably wasn't as cold then. He played Buffalo in Miami week 18. He was out of the game that season. At New England, week 17, 2 years ago, when he had his massive season, they were 5 for 3 for 52 yards. Now, that was when Tua was probably out for the rest of the season, right? Or was that last year when they made it to the playoffs?
It was last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't love Miami.
I don't
in the cold.
I don't like Miami in the cold.
Period. So this game actually has Green Bay as 3-point favorites on a 46.5.
I'll smash
over
that.
Under, but 46.5 is pretty high for a game like that in Miami, which Miami's been able to hold teams low.
I'll smash Green Bay covering that.
I also, as a Jason Sanders kicker owner, he's been pretty good the past couple of weeks. I'm going to swap him out because I do not like him at Green Bay in Lambeau with a storm coming through. Even if there's low wind, it's cold, and there's possible for
get your indoor kickers this week.
Let's talk about the Friday game because this is a weird one. We got Friday, post-Thanksgiving Day. Digest this game. You've got Kansas City at Vegas at Kansas City. It's a 3 p.m. game. It's Black Friday game. Vegas themselves, we talked about it. This is one of the top defenses in Kansas City. Yeah, they didn't look that great defensively against Carolina. But that being said,
line's 13.5.
It's 13.5 favorites on a 42.5 over/under. That just says that
give me Vegas.
Vegas is not going to score anything.
Give me
there.
Vegas.
Vegas at plus 13.5. So you're starting your studs in Kansas City, I think, here. You got to do that. And then if Pacheco's playing, I like this as a good game, a good pretty much warm-up game for Pacheco coming into it.
I still think Hunt's going to get a lot of work. I still like a spread that big. I love it for Vegas, but the truth is that this is probably going to be a Kareem Hunt game. Kansas City should be able to handle Vegas, especially with the questions around the quarterback situation in Vegas. Kels, Noah Gray. I think that they can run away with this. And if Pacheco's going to get work slowly back, then Kareem Hunt's going to probably carry most of the game. They're probably not going to bring in Carson Steele to take in fourth quarter touches if they're up 3 scores.
No, I think this is one of those games where you see Pacheco in early, and if this game gets out of hand, they probably sit him back and see what they like. So
from Vegas, again, this is I'm considering sitting Bowers this week, depending on who starts at quarterback. If Aiden O'Connell's starting, I don't hate it as much. But if Desmond Ritter's starting, I really am going to probably avoid any Raider this week.
Yeah, if Desmond Ritter's starting, I'm 100% avoiding every Raider. And looking at this game,
it's not only a bad matchup for every Raider, but you're having a quarterback that probably shouldn't be on an NFL roster.
When you look at what happened Chuba Hubbard had a fantastic game this past week. This guy's good, so let's not dive into that too much. But through the air, was it David Moore ended up having 10 targets, 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. So they were able to pass the ball there. 57 for Thielen, 56 for Leggett. Tompkins ended up getting 3 catches for 13. Jatavian Sanders, before he left, had 49 yards. So, we know the tight end is the position that feasts against Kansas City. But I think the way that Spagnuolo plays is he takes away your best players. And I think they're going to try and take away Brock Bowers. So this is kind of like a caution Brock Bowers. You're not sitting him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends with 60 yards.
I'd probably set him for Noah Gray.
Yeah, there's a chance. It's a wild play to make, but Bowers, again,
it's not a good matchup.
And I told you, Spagnuolo is a great defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
One of the best ever.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday slate. So first game on the docket, we got the Chargers at Atlanta. This game is favoring the Chargers -1.5. Over under of 47.5 for the Chargers. Obviously, the Chargers game is going on right now.
It's 7-0. 7-0 Chargers. You're watching this and the game's already over, but second quarter.
The Chargers have been playing really good football this year. We talked about it last week coming into the week, why we kind of like them in this game as an upset candidate for the game that's going on right now, because they've been playing good defense and they can run the football. And there's the same kind of philosophy that the Baltimore Ravens have. Yeah. Run the football, play good defense. And, obviously the Harbaugh Bowl going on. Harbaugh knows how to coach a team to win football games. And so I like this game staying a low-scoring affair. So probably like the under in the 47.5. But I like the Chargers getting after Atlanta, getting after Kirk Cousins, especially with Cousins coming off of a bye.
Yeah, and to me, Atlanta doesn't show the firepower. I know they had a 5-touchdown game from Cousins. We'll see if the injury from Mooney still lingers. I know we didn't talk about him earlier on in our injury report, but that's something to watch here. But I believe it was a hamstring, so we'll see how he comes out of that. But, at the end of the day, this Chargers defense is well-rounded to battle the run and the pass, and this Atlanta offense is not well-rounded enough to have the firepower like you see in Detroit.
And obviously going into this week, we're not going to see the injury reports. We're filming this on a Monday, so we're probably not going to go and give you a full start sit for this week. We're saying, hey, these are the guys, but obviously if there's no injury on the report for the last couple of weeks, we're going to assume that those guys are going to stay healthy throughout the week.
Yeah.
Things can change, but if Mooney is not playing in this game, which we don't know at this point if he's going to or not. There's probably going to be some other guys. I don't love Drake London for a huge blow-up game. You're going to start him, though. You're starting Bijan. You're starting Pitts. I think it's a borderline start for Kirk Cousins as well. I don't think it's going to be explosive games, but I think this is going to be a relatively low scoring. It depends. I think Bijan's more likely to get in than passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
So even though I love the receiver, don't love the receivers, but I like the receivers for Pitts and Drake. I don't necessarily love Kirk Cousins because I just don't think that the touchdowns are going to be there.
Yeah, to me, the one thing is the Chargers don't give up the big play. And when you look at what's been done, you did have Joe Burrow as a QB2 throwing for 3 touchdowns at 356 on week 11. with both T. Higgins having the one big play and all that, but that's been rare for the Chargers this season. So to me, at the end of the day, with the Chargers, I'd probably expect there to be not that many big plays by Atlanta. So I'm not holding, my hat on Atlanta here, hoping for big points. You're playing Drake London as like a wide receiver 2 option here. You're playing Bijan Robinson as a low RB1 option too as well because of his usage all around. And Kirk Cousins is a stream play, but there's other guys we named earlier that I think I like a little bit better.
Yeah.
Including Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
In this game.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pittsburgh and Cincinnati since we talked about Joe Burrow.
At Cincinnati.
This is a game where Pittsburgh comes off a devastating loss after a great victory against Baltimore. I think this is another opportunity for Pittsburgh to lose their Cincinnati's favored by 3 points on a 46.5 over-under. I'd pick the over on this game. Joe Burrow and that offense is coming off a bye where they get to rest and be healthy. They're firing on all cylinders. Their running game has been better with Chase Brown as the full starter there. So Zach Moss not even leaking into his touches is helping out. But Pittsburgh against a leaky defense in Cincinnati, this is one of those games that Cincinnati hasn't had their bye until this past week. Their defense hasn't had a break getting torched week after week. Do we see a turnaround in some of these drives where they're giving up this big third down play and turning it into a turnover possessions? And now all of a sudden, Cincinnati's getting on top of these teams 14 to 21 points at times.
I just don't think that Pittsburgh's a bad defense. They're not a defense that's going to allow that. That's part of the reason that Pittsburgh's been winning is because their defense keeps them in every single game.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that with the Chargers game,
I don't see them getting torched by Chase.
I'm not saying torched. I'm talking about...
I don't think they're going to go down 14 points, 20 points in this game. The caliber of offense is different between these two teams, but since Russ has taken helm, like they hit a snag. But, this has been a very good offense. They've been running the football much better. They've been throwing the ball much better. And, yeah, they had a devastating loss. It's a snow game on a Thursday night on a short week going into...
But they also couldn't throw the ball against the Ravens that well.
But they did. They ended up throwing, at the end of the game.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, a team that was been destroyed by the Ravens, or a team that were destroying the Ravens, you think Pittsburgh would have gone out and just been able to manhandle them a little bit better.
It's also not their offense. It's not what Russ has been doing.
Exactly.
Russ is not going out there and throwing slants all over our team and having them go for touchdowns like Burrow is. It's not the same type of offense.
So how do you see this game going? Because in my opinion,
I think it's a slower pace game. I think it's probably a 28-21 game. I think Pittsburgh ends up getting the notch over it. It's going to be close. The defenses are both going to play. Yes, the Bengals got a week off to rest their defense. It doesn't change the players that are out there.
No, you're not wrong, but it
this
does.
Defense stinks.
Yeah, it gives them 2 weeks to prep.
It doesn't matter. This defense stinks.
Yeah, well, they give up the big play, and George Pickens is a guy I like in this game a lot. Yeah. I like him for that reason.
Calvin Austin. You want to talk about big plays? Calvin Austin, and George Pickens, both of them. Warren looked good last game. Najee's been looking good.
Yeah,
this offense is starting to click more and more.
I'm starting the starters in this game from both sides. I like both quarterbacks in this game because you're not sitting Burrow. You like Higgins, you like Chase Brown, you like the running backs for Pittsburgh, the two main receivers over there in Pittsburgh.
I like Calvin Austin in this game.
Do you the tight ends are the ones that are going to be kind of a question mark to see where they go. At the end of the day, both teams have been decent against tight ends for the most part. So I don't know. I think at the end of the game, I agree with you, but I do think Cincinnati comes on top. This is a Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh and they keep winning out, and you get a loss to the Chargers tonight from Baltimore. You have teams like Cincinnati. They're like, oh, this is in reach. We have an opportunity. We get our 5th win this week. And we steamroll it because the teams they play afterwards are Dallas, Tennessee,
There's teams like
Cleveland.
Pittsburgh that seem to win the close game, and there's teams like Cincinnati
that don't.
who lose the close
This
game.
is Cincinnati's been playing like, I was talking to somebody
And so
in my
close
office.
games between these two teams, I'm going to favor Pittsburgh.
Tell me that Cincinnati's not playing like Minnesota 2 years ago when they lost so many games by 3 points and then lost to the Giants in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
it's similar.
Anyway, so
right,
next game here.
Arizona, Minnesota.
Speaking of Minnesota, it's in Minnesota too.
In Minnesota, Arizona looked awful in this game. Very unusual for the way they've been playing. The defense the defense didn't look bad. At times they looked really good. They've been able to pressure, but the offense couldn't get anything. They couldn't run the football, and this team is based off of running the football. Kyler looked good at times, couldn't sustain drives, was short and off the field very, very quickly. A lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of quick drives. This is a bounce back. Minnesota's been good.
I think this is going to be a tough game for them to run on here too against Minnesota.
It's going to be a tough game, a tough team for them to run on. Although Minnesota did get run on. I just think that their defense as a whole is a better defense. But I don't know. It looks like Seattle played with just a huge fire in that game.
Yeah, big chip. I think
big
for
chip,
sure.
like especially at the defensive line. That every one of those players were fired up, getting in the backfield on every single play. Like you looked at James Conner, had no room to run at all. This is a different offense. I think that this could be a bounce back game for Arizona. I still like Minnesota in this game, but again, we need to see what's kind of happening with Sam Darnold this week. You're starting Jefferson either way. You're starting T.J. Hawkinson either way. I would say go ahead and start Addison. You're starting Aaron Jones. On the Arizona side, I think Kyler is a good start this week. I think this defense has been good, but
I think McBride,
they need to win.
Yeah, well, they need to win. Minnesota needs to continue winning. Like these games are getting a little tougher. Like this Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game we talked about.
Like
these are tougher games.
Record might not look the same, but they're very similar. They're in similar situations, right? Arizona's on the top of their division.
Like, not anymore.
They're a game out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're right there at the top. But not at the top.
They were going into last weekend too.
Yeah, but I'm saying so they're right, like Minnesota's right behind Detroit. They need to keep winning.
Both these teams need to keep winning, and for Arizona, they need to keep winning more because they're not going to make a wild card.
No,
with their record. So it's the winner of that division in the West is the only team from the West going in.
Yeah,
and so they need to win.
I like Trey McBride here. It's tough to sit Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the talent, but at the end of the day, he disappears. He disappears. So I wouldn't be – the only reason why I wouldn't say he's a sit is because Minnesota has given up big plays through the air pretty often.
Give me some Michael Wilson.
Yeah.
He's looked good.
Yeah, he gets open.
When it wasn't Trey McBride that Murray was looking for in the last game, it was Michael Wilson.
Yeah.
So – you have to start James Conner. It's a tougher matchup, but you have to start him.
I mean, his snaps have gone down. It's just the weirdest thing. And then they bring him in on 2-minute drills and in late game for sure. But it's the weirdest thing. Like I was not expecting that. Like, what are you saving him for? You got to win ball games,
right? I don't understand that.
I mean, Trey Benson's a good running back. I will say that. And DeMarcado has had some good opportunities.
It's not like Trey Benson is going out there and having Devon Achane numbers.
No, I agree. It's not the same situation. And even then, they still
don't get me started on that. Don't get me started.
Anyway, Indy at New England.
And New England, a really gross game. I think Indy cocomes out favored in this game.
Barely favored by 3 points at 42.5. It's not the lowest. The next game we're talking about is the lowest.
Listen, Anthony Richardson, his plays looked better than earlier in the season. I still think that there's demeanors that I see on the field that is just like, is this guy cut out to be an NFL guy? Is this guy cut out to be a franchise quarterback?
I watched him on a couple passing plays, like
third downs. Like there were a couple times when like he got hit on a third down in the backfield, and it looked like he wanted to take the play off again. And it looked like he just didn't want to be in. To me, I didn't hone in on that as much as I was watching some of his passes that were just errant. Really bad overthrown misses on wide open receivers with just a little bit of pressure coming on him. Like Are you talking about the Alec Pierce one where when it was right out of his fingertips?
No, I'm talking about.
I think that was a great throw. It was barely off.
Barely off. No, I'm talking about ones that were uncatchable.
Yeah.
Uncatchable.
Yeah. Again,
and I'm not talking about the one where he's being pulled to the ground and he tries to throw it to hit Josh Downs on the out route. I'm talking about ones that he's thrown over receivers' heads. So I agree. I think this is tough, but New England's defense hasn't been difficult to throw on. And
they haven't been difficult to throw on, and
this is where, to me, Alec Pierce has a big opportunity because he's not going to see Gonzalez.
No. I think Alec Pierce is going to be have a good game this game. I think Anthony Richardson, from a running perspective, could have a good game in this game.
I think Jonathan Taylor has a bounce back too.
Yeah. I like Indianapolis in this. From the Patriots side, Hunter Henry, Pop Douglas. I think Kendrick Bourne can get a little bit more involved in this. Ramondre's just been disappearing too.
To me, Drake May is a streamer option here.
Yeah, I think so. The Indy really hasn't shown anything on defense where you're just like, yeah, I really like them. They play well at times, but they're not consistent enough. They're not exactly Swiss cheese, but they have holes and they allow big plays. So, yeah, I mean, the New England has some sneak appeal to it in this game.
Yeah. Next game, Seattle at New York.
Yeah.
Listen, the way Seattle won that game, you got to hope they keep that energy going to it and not have one of those big highs and then down to a lows. Like the Jets coming off a bye week, I don't think it helps them at all because the news has been terrible about this whole Aaron Rodgers and returning next year, not returning.
I at this point don't even know how to analyze this game other than like I just don't.
Well, I'm starting Breece Hall. I'm starting Garrett Wilson. I'm starting Devontae Adams on the New York side. Like plain and simple, that's what I'm doing. On the Seattle side, you're starting Kenneth Walker. You're starting the two of the three receivers. You're sitting Lockett, but your DK and JSN, you have to start the big playability there. So, and
you got to start Geno.
Geno is an opportunity to be a nice streamable opportunity at the Jets in New York. So, don't overthink this game.
Yeah.
If you got people in this game, don't overthink it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Tennessee at Washington. Now, this is one that I think is going to be interesting because you got Washington now with their backs up against the wall after a bad loss to Dallas. You got Tennessee coming off a great upset victory against Houston with an opportunity to throw the ball well against a Washington defense that's been giving up the pass. So this could be another one. Washington's favorite as 5.5 point favorites.
Yeah.
And I think Tennessee's got a better defense that people are giving them credit for. And they actually are able to move the ball down the field through the air. So
yeah, I mean, I like Jaden in this game.
Yep.
I like Brian Robinson if he plays in
if
this
healthy.
Game. If he doesn't, I like McNichols a lot. If he does play, I still like McNichols as a streamable sleeper option in this game. I like Terry McLaurin. Noah Brown is another sleeper option in this game. And Zach Ertz is a good streamable tight end option.
Something I will say is I give a slight downgrade in terms of where I would rank the receivers on this if L'Jarius Sneed is playing this week. He did not play this past week against Houston.
Yeah.
And that was apparent. I mean, they were able to move the ball down the field through the air for sure in Houston. So, and then on the Tennessee side, Calvin Ridley is back to
Westbrook-Ikhine and Pollard.
Yeah.
And the guys. I mean, I know Chig had like the one big play and had a huge touchdown in this last week, but I just don't. I don't see the.
He's never been consistent.
It's not consistent, so you miss the boat. The boat sailed.
Yeah. Houston at Jacksonville. This one's pretty simple.
Start Houston.
Start Houston. I do like on the Jacksonville side.
Brian Thomas Jr.
Thomas Jr. and Tank Bigsby.
Parker Washington.
Nah, I'm starting
sleeper option.
One receiver. I'm starting.
They're gonna be down in this game.
Doesn't matter. I'm starting one receiver.
You starting Evan Ingram?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with Ingram.
Okay. You starting Etienne?
No, I'd like Tank Bigsby.
I know you said that, but you're going to sit Etienne?
Tank Bigsby's been a better running back this season.
You're not wrong.
So, like, I mean, again, Houston is not stopping people through the run that well.
Yeah.
You know, we saw this the past week.
Yeah, start Nico. Start Tank Dell. Cade Stover had a touchdown this past game.
Stover was pretty heavily involved at times.
It's not a startable option.
John Mechie is involved, but he's not a startable guy.
Yeah, Mixon's going to he's going to churn in this game.
L.A. Rams, the Rams at New Orleans in the Dome there. This is a must-win game for the Rams. Start your studs on both these teams. You're starting Kyren, you're starting Puka, you're starting Kupp, and you're starting Stafford. I'm not starting Derek Carr.
You like Colby Parkinson in this game? Not so much? Okay.
Like he's one of these tight ends that he shows up. Like his consistency is going to be about 50 yards.
I like Ertz over.
Yeah.
I like Ingram, Ertz.
Ertz is more involved on a drive-by-drive basis. But speaking of tight ends, you're starting Taysom Hill, but the only reason I'm saying don't start Derek Carr is because Derek Carr's not a stud to me.
No.
But you're starting Taysom Hill, you're starting Kamara, and then you've got to really like think about who else on this offense is going to give me something. Well, MVS has shown it already. And I like the opportunity. There wasn't LA's not giving up very much through the air, and I think they're going to give Carr a hard time. But where they think they can get beat is by Kamara out the backfield, like the little trickery that they do and the magician work with Taysom Hill, and then Carr being able to at least hit one big play to MVS here or there. So they have LA as 3-point favorites in New Orleans. That says a lot.
Yeah.
In New Orleans. So I like the Rams here to win this one out. And Rams are in a situation just like the Bengals. They're not out of reach. Bengals are a little more out of reach than the Rams are, but the Rams are still in playoff contention. Yeah. They could keep winning out here. And they play a heavy part of their schedule at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I would caution against Taysom Hill you're going to start and play, but I don't expect the 30-point game from him this week. This is a very athletic defensive front and very athletic linebacker and core.
Don't let Saquon fool you that people are going to be able to run on this defense.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, Carolina. Carolina played really well in this past week. Chuba Hubbard's been probably the if there's an award for in between comeback player of the year and MVP, he's it. He's winning that award. He is the sleeper player of the year.
Yeah.
And he has been absolutely fantastic this year. Has a mediocre game last week against Kansas City, but that's the best rushing defense, and he still goes for 55 yards and a touchdown against them. Bryce Young looked good. They have just a bunch of I hate to say this because it's insulting to the players, but a bunch of nobodies.
Well, Thielen was back, which helped out that receiving core a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but he wasn't the guy. I mean,
he didn't need to be the guy, but he got open when he probably needed to be. And so, I mean, when Bryce Young goes for 263 and a touchdown against a really tough defense and 3 carries for 20 yards, he was 21 for 35, so he threw the ball heavily too, and he didn't throw a pick against a tough defense. That's a win in my book for Carolina overall. And I also think at the end of the day, when you look at what he has an opportunity to do against a defense that is a little bit easier to pass on in Tampa.
But, I mean, what Bryce Young are we going to get?
You're not wrong, but I think since the benching, we've seen a different Bryce Young since he came back in after the injury to Andy Dalton.
It's been a better offense. It's been a better offense for sure.
Well, because they know who they have here now. And, I mean, you look at Bryce Young. Since he came back into the game and he got his starting job back against Denver, he was 24 for 37 with 2 touchdowns for 224. Against New Orleans, he had low volume but still had a touchdown. He had a touchdown against the Giants. He was where were they? Germany. Then they had a bye week, and he comes back and throws 35 passes against one of the toughest defenses in the league. It was QB 12. I think against Tampa Bay, he has another opportunity to put himself up there in a top 12 fashion. He's a tough game against Philly, but then he has Dallas, tough game against Arizona, and then he has Tampa again. So it is an interesting one for them to put a disruptor into this division.
This is typically one of those games that, like, from a betting standpoint, I stay away from.
100% agree with you.
You have a team that just came off a huge, almost upset victory. Probably the worst team in football versus the best team in football, and they almost pull up the upset. And a team with Tampa Bay that just cruised to victory against the Giants, and it's just I don't. With Baker, I'm probably staying away from this game. Like, you're starting Mike Evans, you're starting Bucky Irving. I like Rashad White in this game. I don't think Carolina's been very good against the run, and they've not been good against the tight ends either. So Cade Otton, in this game as well.
Yeah, I like Chuba Hubbard here. We'll see how Jonathan Brooks, if he gets more than 2 carries. I'm really not trusting any of these wide receivers because you just don't know what carousel it's going to hit on.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to be another David? If David Moore going to be more than a one-game wonder? Is it going to be Thielen that's going to take
coming back again?
Is it Coker that's now going to have?
Well, Coker's going to be out. I think he's got a concussion.
Jatavion Sanders is probably going to be out.
Even
though he was released from the hospital, he's still probably going to be out.
Yeah,
missing some time.
So I agree with you. I mean, again, not needing to talk about this much. Tampa Bay 6-point favorites. So, Philly at Baltimore. This could be the game of the week here. You're talking about 2 teams, and depending upon if Baltimore comes out of this,
it's not the Fox game of the week because it's not.
It's not Fox. But I will say,
sorry, Tom Brady.
If it. Oh, by the way, watch out for this Sunday night on Peacock game. Subscribe to that. But anyway, so if you're talking about the Baltimore game. If they lose tonight to the Chargers, and right now they're losing 10-7, this game could be a little bit more impactful for them. And you have Philadelphia juggernaut on offense, and Saquon Barkley disregarding whatever defenses he's playing against. He's putting up big numbers. It could be an interesting game. I like Philly's offense. You're starting A.J. Brown. You're starting Saquon Barkley. I like Goddard in this game too as well. And if Devonta Smith comes back, I downgrade Goddard a little bit, and I like Devonta Smith back in this game. On the Baltimore side of things,
you sure you don't like Jahan Dotson?
No, well, it was 15 yards I needed from him this past game. Don't get me into it. That wasn't the only thing I missed.
I don't think he's gotten 15 yards all season.
But Baltimore side of things, you're starting Henry and you're starting Lamar Jackson. But
starting Flowers.
You're starting Zay Flowers. It's going to be a tough game for him, but you're starting him. We saw Puka have success on the game this weekend. We'll see. Kupp had decent success against them. They just don't. Philadelphia just doesn't give up that many big plays, and also their linebackers have been pretty good, and especially against the tight ends. So that's one thing where I don't love the tight ends in this game.
Yeah, I probably like Isaiah Likely more than Mark Andrews in this game. I like Zay Flowers though in this game.
Yeah, I'm good with Zay Flowers because they're going to be able to pass the ball still. But this is one where they don't have a line yet set for it. And I think they're waiting to see what happens with Baltimore tonight, obviously, if they win or lose, if injuries happen or anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this as like a 1.5 point favorite to either side.
Yeah, I mean, what they're probably going to do is give a 3-point favorite to Baltimore because it's a home game for them. And that's just going to dictate that it's even. If we see it swing anything less than that, then they're going to be favoring.
Then it's a 50-50. To me, I think like 1.5 point favorite to Baltimore in Baltimore, it's a coin toss to them. It's a coin flip. It's a 50-50. Or if you give a 3-point favorite to Baltimore and the way Philly's offense is playing, you're saying that
it's a home field advantage. Like your home field advantage points are 3 points.
Yeah.
Anyway,
they're not. Yeah. Okay. San Fran at Buffalo. The Sunday night game here. San Fran struggling offense. Buffalo surging team coming off a bye. Their defense is playing better than it did at the beginning of the season.
I mean, thankfully this is the night game.
Yeah.
Because this is going to give everyone a little bit more clarity. It also sucks that it's a night game because if Purdy's not playing in this, and we don't know Purdy's not playing until Sunday afternoon.
I still don't like it if he is playing. I'm starting my players thinking even if he is playing, you're seeing more rushes by Debo. You're seeing a lot more short passes.
That's the thing is I think they learned their lesson from this past week that even if Purdy's not playing, Debo's going to get a lot more involved. McCaffrey's going to get a lot more involved. I think Debo had one target.
Kittle's going to be involved. I don't like
Kittle was involved early in this game, but like I think that they're going to need to be more creative than running the Shanahan offense. They're going to have to run the Shanahan offense like it was 3-4 years ago with Garoppolo.
Yeah, I am not playing Juwan Jennings, even if Purdy's playing because he doesn't. He's not. It just if he's lightly throwing this week, I don't see him having the arm for a consistent game to be able to get it downfield to him that often, and with the speed he's going to need to on that fast defense. But I do like. I'm going to play Debo. I'm definitely playing McCaffrey because this Baltimore defense has been hurt by the run as well, regardless of who's there.
It's for that. I mean, you're starting McCaffrey, but like you're hedging your bets. Like again, does Trent Williams play? And I know it's just an offensive lineman, but he dictates what that offense does. It doesn't matter who's in at quarterback. If he's in the game, that offense is going to be running. He is the best player in football.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And if he's playing, they're going to be able to run the football effectively.
Okay. But I mean, that's what I'm saying on that San Francisco side. There's 3 guys that I feel confident in. McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle.
Yeah.
And then on the Buffalo side, James Cook, Josh Allen you're playing. We don't know what the receivers. Is Keon Coleman going to be healthy to play again? Is Amari Cooper going to be healthy enough to play again? I don't know. Is Dalton Kincaid going to be healthy at all?
Yeah.
So like
a lot of injuries on their receiving
I
front.
think this is one where they're definitely going to lean on the run game with Cook. Like you have almost like a opportunity too with Ray Davis, who's been getting a drive here and there that he could end up in the end zone too as well. They're going to lean on that. And then obviously Josh Allen does Josh Allen things.
Yeah. And then the Monday night game, we got Cleveland at Denver. Denver's the 5.5-point favorite, as they should be. The over-under of 42.5. Denver's defense has been very good this year. Cleveland coming off a big win from Pittsburgh with Jameis Winston. Very different offense with him back there. I still like Denver in this game. I think their offense has been good. Their defense has been good. They've been a complete team. Cleveland's defense is not the same defense as it was last year, and I think they neutralized Myles Garrett with getting the ball out of Bo Nix's hand very quickly. So
and he's quick enough to get out of the pocket, and he's not afraid to throw it away too.
Well, I just think with Peyton, the way his designs are just getting the ball out of his hand. I mean, you don't see a lot of you see the scripted target shots downfield.
Yeah,
it's not these analyze the play, see a broken play. That guy's open deep. I'm going to throw it there.
Yeah,
he's not a first read. Like that's the only read is when they're taking the shots deep and it's scripted. But the way it's scripted is because they've been running 20% of the game prior to that, just dumping the balls off short.
Well, on the Cleveland side of the ball, Jameis Winston, you put him in a place on altitude. How far can he throw that ball?
Give me some Jerry Jeudy.
But, well, no, here's the thing is I don't know if I love Jerry Jeudy. If he's getting the Patrick Surtain treatment, which he should because Tillman's going to be out, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, like these are guys that I think are going to end up coming out bigger in a streamable opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, I think Njoku definitely is a guy you want to start in this. I mean, they haven't been very good running the football. Even with Chubb back. So I don't love it for them. Elijah Moore is a good play. It depends on where Surtain's going to go.
Yeah, and I just think they're going to try and take care of Jerry Jeudy because I don't think you have any fear in anybody else.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think you can neutralize Jeudy. You're sitting with low ADOT Elijah Moore and let him beat you at the tight end.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, that's our start sits. Thanks for sticking with us through the whole thing.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Yes. I hope you and your families enjoy the holiday together.
Get that trip to fan.
Yeah. Hopefully the games on Thanksgiving are a little more excited than some of them are supposed to be. But if you are traveling, drive safe, drink responsibly. And at the end of the day, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.